Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Teri Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion, learn the truth behind the alcohol myths, and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. Well, hey everyone, it's Teri back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast. And if you are listening in real time, the 2026 Winter Olympics are in their first few days. And I have been just admiring and marveling at how these athletes show up in this place. And I was working with a client recently, and she said, well, I guess we're all capable. It's the choosing, it's the choice, it's the actions that make the difference. And so I want to talk to you today about how to take this beautiful and incredible example of these Olympic athletes to help us embrace and grow in our alcohol free lifestyle. So, what can Olympians teach us about alcohol free living? You might be surprised at the incredible amount of lessons that are connected to this, whether it's emotions, rest, nervous system regulation, discipline, habits, choices, mindset, their journey to become Olympic athletes. We can learn so much and we can model and take from them some of the things we want to use in our own alcohol-free journey. So we can model our alcohol-free journey after some of these very key tenets of mindset and habits and desire all around this. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What we can learn from these beautiful Olympians and what elite training has to do and can teach us about alcohol-free living. So, we tend to think that Olympians are exceptional because they're mentally tough. But what they actually are exceptional at is understanding nervous system regulation, repetition, and recovery. And here's the cool thing is that alcohol-free living isn't about being stronger than cravings. It's about conditioning your brain and body for a new baseline. And so we know that willpower eventually fails, but training will fill that gap. And so I love the idea of how do we train like an Olympian? So, one of the most important things to think about, and we've talked about this before on the Sober Edge podcast, but really to think about our identity before behavior. We can look at the habits that James Clear talks about and how identity is so key. We can also think about the person we are becoming. And so Olympians act like Olympians before the medals arrive. Identity is what drives choices when we are under pressure. And it's the same for us. We want to act our way to becoming. We don't fake it till we make it. That's not what I'm talking about here. But we have this beautiful way of recognizing that we are 100% capable of change. And so when we look at the neuroscience, the brain predicts behavior based on identity. It's why identity is such a key part. And identity reduces decision fatigue in our prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of our brain. When we say, oh, I'm someone who prioritizes health and wellness. I'm someone who wants to be fully present for my family. My identity is tied up in performing at a top level. Then alcohol has no place. We don't have to decide and redecide. Well, should I have a drink tonight? No, because it's going to disconnect me from my family. It's going to shift that identity that I just declared was paramount. So I don't drink is easier than I'm trying not to drink. The nervous system relaxes when these types of decisions are settled. And, here's the thing is commitment doesn't have to feel like pressure. It's actually relief for the brain. I've shared before that when I decided that I would stop drinking forever, that's when I found relief. That's when I found the freedom to move forward because I was no longer stuck in the old identity. I was no longer trying to figure out the machinations and the magic of how to put together a place where I could control alcohol and still enjoy it. And so that commitment was relief. And the other thing that Olympians understand is that discipline is not punishment. Discipline can be our freedom. This also comes from the work of Gretchen Rubin, who I've talked about before, but the idea of allowing ourselves to have structure. It's the same reason that we understand that children need guidelines, rules. They need to have a framework so that they don't feel unsafe. Our nervous system wants that beautiful discipline. And so, if we look at these amazing Olympic athletes, we see that discipline protects their energy and that routines can create safety and predictability. We're going to talk about nervous system throughout this podcast today because we have to understand the connection to safety is how we move forward. And if we don't untangle that piece, we might continue to go back to using alcohol or other substances to soothe. And so if we look at that nervous system connection, predictable routines calm the emotional seat of our brain, the limbic system, that amygdala. So we have less connection to that perceived threat when life is predictable, calm, safe. It's one of the most interesting things that happen as we move away from alcohol is we initially might miss those highs and lows, that chaos. But what's really happening is our nervous system is recalibrating and we're recognizing that calm and peace is the seat of nervous system safety. And so drinking often happens in that dysregulated state. So structure equals safety for our nervous system. It's the same thing with Olympians. They have to understand that they have to have a consistent routine. They have to set goals and be working toward those goals. They have to feel connected to their nervous system and grounded before they can try new attempts or routines or push themselves to that next level. And so discipline isn't about being hard on yourself. It's about reducing chaos. And that's true for these beautiful Olympians. We see so much discipline built in. And for some of us, it might feel like, wow, that feels hard. I would take away all the fun. But no, actually, what we're doing is we're creating a runway to enjoy our life as it's meant to be enjoyed. The third way that we want to look at the gift that Olympians give us in this example is that repetition rewires our brain. So, what Olympic athletes recognize is that mastery comes from the mundane, in and out, day by day repetition. Same drills, same fundamentals. And this is how we build consistency. So we talk a lot in alcohol-free living about getting the reps in. The first time we go to a restaurant and the server asks us, would you like a cocktail? Our whole brain might light up. We might feel flooded with emotion. And the 100th time we do that, we won't even blink. And so repetition helps us build in that rewiring of the brain. And so mastery comes from doing the same thing in and out. And we know this from the work of James Clear and Atomic Habits too, is that we're going to automate things over time with enough repetition. People ask me sometimes, well, why 90 days? Why do I invite people into a 12-week program? Or 12 weeks when we work together one on one. It's because we want enough time to do the reps. We want to consistently do the same thing day in and day out and build that repetition, which helps us with that nervous system where we're rewiring the brain, we're calming down. And so, neuroplasticity. Remember, our brain being able to make new pathways, new connection, that neurogenesis requires repetition and emotion. The brain changes through these consistent signals. It's not all at once. It's like, how do you start to build a habit and build muscles? By going to the gym regularly. And so it's not going to the gym for 4 hours once a month. It is the consistency that matters. And so each alcohol-free choice helps us strengthen these new neural pathways. And your brain doesn't change because you want it to. It changes because you show it the result of change over and over and over again. You get to be consistent. You get to put in the reps. This is how Olympic athletes become so dialed in to their routine or the jump that they're doing on the ice or in the snow. And muscle memory is part of this too. But it speaks to how our brain needs repetition. Same thing with alcohol-free living. And here's something that no one likes to hear, but it ultimately is good news. But the discomfort is part of the training. Are we going to feel comfortable in the beginning of our alcohol-free journey? No. Are we going to experience some challenges when it comes to discomfort and emotions and people's reactions and our brain kind of going on autopilot, cravings, all of that? Yes, discomfort is part of the work that we get to do. And here's the thing about our Olympic athletes. They expect discomfort and they don't panic when it shows up. And so if we expect some discomfort, we can help our nervous system to calm down. And instead of seeing discomfort as danger, we will see it as growth. We can see it as healing. The nervous system learns safety through exposure without catastrophe. So if every time we stopped drinking or said no to a drink, something catastrophic happened, it would be almost impossible to stop drinking. And so what we do is when we expect some discomfort, we stop seeing it as danger. And so then as we go through the discomfort, we do not associate it, this exposure of discomfort. We no longer associate it with catastrophe. And that makes a huge difference. And so remember, cravings are a signal. They're not a reason to drink. They're not a command. They're not your brain taking over and controlling you. They're just a signal. Oh, something is off. Something is familiar. That's an old pattern. Oh, I'm slipping into some old coping skills. Oh, I'm feeling overwhelmed and my brain is on autopilot. Cravings are just a signal. And so when we let them rise and fall, we get to experience that discomfort that is not attached to the negative action or to this catastrophic experience. So, discomfort, again, is that sign that we're healing, we're on the right path, we're making progress. Not that something is wrong, but that, yes, I expect this, and this is how I'm going to handle it. And I get to remind my brain and my nervous system that this is growth. It's not catastrophe, it's growth. How beautiful is that? Thank you, Olympians, for modeling discomfort. And then here's something that we often forget, and Olympians know this. Recovery is where the magic happens. All athletes are subject to burnout, to fatigue. And if we don't allow ourselves to rest and recovery and repair, then we can get into the danger zone. So I sometimes have clients that want to do all the things all at once. I'm going to overhaul my diet. I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to set boundaries. And if we are not building in a rhythm and a realistic expectation of this recovery timeline and rest, we run the risk of burnout. And then all of our old coping skills come back and we find ourselves falling back into those old patterns. So, Olympic athletes have a recovery schedule. They know that overtraining can be dangerous and even lead to injury. And so, with us, we have to understand that being grounded and being in a place where we are prioritizing lifestyle, sleep, meditation, calm, parasympathetic activation is required for the repair work that we're doing. We have to be in a place where we have moments of calm and ease and relaxation, and we're learning tools. We need to be learning tools all the time to activate our parasympathetic state so that we spend time actually in repair and recovery. And the reason this is so important is because when we're using alcohol, we are disrupting our REM sleep, we're disrupting our vagal tone, we're disrupting emotional processing. And so all of this is going to be part of repair. And our nervous system needs to be settled and relaxed. We need to be in that window of regulation in order to really take advantage of recovery. And so remember, when we're drinking, alcohol often masquerades as recovery. Oh, I'm going to unwind. I'm going to slow down my brain. I'm going to relax. I'm going to delay stress. All of these things. And that is not recovery. True recovery is something that calms the nervous system instead of numbing it. I'm going to say that again. Real recovery calms the nervous system. It doesn't numb it. And so you probably already know, and you've heard this before, but we think about how we build muscle. So in order to build muscle, we have to fatigue the muscle. We have to break it down and then we rebuild it. And so the same way when it happens with our alcohol-free life is that we don't build the strength during the training, we build it during recovery. So this is part of how we recognize how important recovery is. And so we're going to build that recovery muscle. Now, when it comes to nervous system, we want to be careful that we also recognize that when our nervous system is activated, that is a really powerful time to respond differently and create change. So when it comes to our nervous system, we actually do build strength during the practice of it in the moment, but also we can practice nervous system regulation tools ahead of time, in the moment, and after. So this recovery is, again, magic. Magic. So here's the other thing that's really interesting is we often forget about our environment. And Olympians pay close attention to this. They set themselves up for success by designing their environment to support success and to remove unnecessary friction. So I talk to people all the time that are like, yeah, it doesn't bother me to have alcohol in the house. Or I never gave away the alcohol or threw it out. It's just in a bar over there. But That's part of our environment. So be careful and be mindful. And we can learn a lot, again, by these Olympic athletes that creating and designing your environment to support your success is key. Yes, we might be okay with alcohol in the house, but what if we could make our journey easier, lighter, more successful, less tension, friction, less willpower by just simply removing the alcohol? Simple things. So look at your environment and notice. And so we also want to take a look at our environment as the people we spend the most time with, or how we are prioritizing habits, sleep, movement, lifestyle things that make a huge difference. So remember, when it comes to environment and willpower, our brain wants to conserve energy. It's wired for safety, and one of the primary motivators for our brain is to conserve energy. And so it's going to default to what's easiest and most familiar. So let your environment work for you and not against you. If your environment requires constant resistance, then your nervous system is going to be under that pressure and may eventually rebel. Now, here's the other thing that we can learn from Olympians, and this is so powerful. No Olympians train alone. Coaches help regulate emotions, not just performance. So, coaching, community, co regulation is a huge part of how these elite athletes train and become successful. So, humans regulate through connection. It's been said that the opposite of addiction is connection. So, co regulation often precedes self regulation. Co-regulation often precedes self-regulation. So think about how being in a supportive environment, working with a coach, or in a community can be a huge, huge bonus and benefit to your alcohol-free journey. I just had the lovely opportunity to have a client share with me, like, this is making such a difference. I've tried things in the past, but having this one on one connection, understanding some of the tools, someone who sees my blind spots, these tangible takeaways are really helping. And so, this is how it works with coaching. And so, support isn't weakness, it's biology. We need it. And also, when we feel seen and supported, we feel safe. And that calms our nervous system. And when our nervous system is calm, we have access to emotional regulation, the thinking part of our brain, better choices. We can reinforce what's working. We can build in self control. All this comes from our nervous system feeling safe. And then finally, I love this about Olympians and what they can teach us. So, delayed gratification. So many of us in our current culture want that quick fix. And it's not that we are greedy or weak, but our culture actually reinforces this. You know, when I work with clients around nutrition, I have to remind them that there is no quick fix. You cannot do a 21-day soup diet and then suddenly have a new relationship with food and a new lifestyle and a new size of clothing. That's not how it works. There is delayed gratification because real change takes consistency and time and effort. And so when we look at these Olympic athletes, what's so fascinating about them is it's only every 4 years. And so the idea that they're going to have this one opportunity and they've been working their whole life for it. And that delayed gratification of when that 4 years is gonna come up. So they think in years, not days, and they don't expect or obsess over immediate gratification. You know, I work with clients in, the capacity of 90 days, and sometimes, members will feel like, "Oh, this 90 days, I've got it. I figured it all out. I have all the, resources and tools and confidence that I need. And they're forgetting that this is built over time, that consistency and repetition and understanding root cause, all of this doesn't happen in just 90 days. And so when we get too caught up in that quick fix, we miss the gift that comes from the discipline of the training, of being in the work. There's so many gifts. Getting to know ourselves better, learning to love ourselves again, understanding how to deal with emotions, recognizing how habits can help us create a life we want. And even just delaying gratification itself is such a gift as we slow down and really connect to the gifts of the present moment. And so, dopamine has a big part in this. We're so used to chasing those dopamine highs. And, alcohol can be the shortcut toward dopamine. And sometimes this is present in our life for years. And so we have to untangle and unwind that and learn to enjoy the rhythm of less highs and less lows and really embrace that as peace, as a gift. And so alcohol can give fast relief, but the regret can last for so long. And alcohol-free living gives us that slow relief and that lasting reward. It doesn't happen overnight. And so it's not about giving something up. It's about creating lasting change, playing the longer game, recognizing that the rewards are happening along the way, and they're really tied to that future vision of ourselves and how we're creating the consistency to live a life we don't want to escape from. And so you do not need to have a super Olympic appearance, and you do not need to have special genetics. Certainly, these athletes often do, but we can have the same elite life. We can train our nervous system for who we are becoming. So, if we take some of these lessons, delayed gratification, training, understanding our emotions, getting coaching, setting our environment up for success, prioritizing recovery, recognizing that there will be some discomfort, repetition, getting in the reps, doing things day in and day out, embracing discipline, setting our identity as a key component to this, we are going to be able to treat our body and brain like an elite instrument. And we're going to be able to embrace this journey to living a different life as a true gift, not without resistance, and not as a punishment, but actually as a beautiful part to who we are becoming. So I had so much fun thinking about these amazing athletes, and I'm so happy that there's about another 10 days left of the Olympics, and I'm going to keep leaning into this beautiful idea of learning how to stay committed, work through challenging parts, build resilience, and become the best version of me. Even though I won't be jumping off any ski slopes or dancing on the ice, I get to create an impactful and beautiful and very present, connected life. And that feels very, very much like winning the game. So thanks for tuning in today. Let me know how you're thinking and living your alcohol-free life like an Olympian. And we'll talk soon. I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.